What I'm going to unfold in this video is just the tip of the iceberg on a numbering pattern in the Bible that's very deep. It's going to take a while for it to unfold. If it was easy to see, it would be and easy to explain, we would already be all over it. So please bear with me as I get into it. It's going to take unfolding a few things and getting it set up in order to understand what this numbering pattern is. And I'm still in this video doing my best to keep it brief. I know they get long. It's old and they're big. I have found a numerical Bible sequence that demonstrates a repeating sequence. It's very difficult to see. It's very conceptual. It has to do with numbering patterns, and it starts with a 3 and a 7. My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to the video. This is deep Bible analysis. I'm going to show you something nobody's looking at, nobody's seen before, but we can see it for ourselves. First of all, what we have to understand is what we're looking at would be available to our brains if we had the stories memorized, but we don't. In their time, they had to memorize the stories, so they had access to something at a deeper layer than what we have access to. And that's how many times things are repeating in there. There's a code in the story, and the only way to pass along code is through numbers. It's a verbal story. It's memorized. Where does the code go? It goes in repeats. And if you notice in the Bible, there will be a lot of repeating numbers. Okay. That having been said, just a little bit of background. When I was a kid going to church, going to Sunday school, I remember asking questions like, hey, how come there's so many times 3, 7, 12, and 40 repeat? I remember asking that because it seemed like it. The rain for 40 days and 40 nights, 40 years in the desert, 40 days in the wilderness, just story after story that features 3, 7, 12s, and 40s. And I was never told to shut up or anything like that. I was always actually encouraged and told, oh, that's wonderful. You pay such good attention and you remember those. That's really good. There's nothing to it. That's just how long it was. Don't question any further than that. But that's wonderful. Good on you, Danny. So I remember that kind of treatment. But I also remember looking at it going, no, I don't think so. But I was a kid. I had no idea. I just thought something was weird. Now, today, I see it. And it starts with a 3 and a 7. I'm going to jump ahead real quick just to show you what we're heading towards, but we have to step back and gather this up. The number analog count, 3, 7 grid. What I've got here is these numbers collected. Look at that. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 10, 12, 15, 17, 20, 30, 40, 41, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. We've got some other things going on down here that are, there's number patterns for a reason. Okay, now if we take those numbers that are gathered in Genesis in various ways and put them here and look at them in the Bible, there's 22 numbers right there that are repeated over 6,052 times in the Bible. There's a reason for it. Let me show you what I've got going on here. But that was the pattern I was seeing as a kid. I was barely seeing the tip of the iceberg. There's 22 numbers. I was only seeing 4 of them. 6,052 times. Yeah, that's significant. Why is that? Okay, before getting further into that, we have some loose ends to tie up. First of all, when the Bible was written, it did not contain chapters and verses. They were added in. In fact, let's read up on that. When the books of the Bible were originally written, they did not contain chapter or verse references. The Bible was divided into chapters and verses to help us find scriptures more quickly and easily. It's much easier to find John chapter 3 verse 16 than it is to find For God so loved the world. In a few places, chapter breaks are poorly placed. Keep that in mind. That's a key. Chapter breaks are poorly placed, and as a result, divide content that should flow together. Overall, though, the chapter and verse divisions are very helpful. The chapter divisions commonly used today were developed by Stephen Langton, an Archbishop of Canterbury. Langton put the modern chapter divisions into place in around AD 1227. The Wycliffe English Bible of 1382 was the first Bible to use this chapter pattern. Since the Wycliffe Bible, nearly all Bible translations have followed Langton's chapter divisions. All right, that's all we need to read up on that. So, Well, then what does that tell us if the numbers are important and there's some chapter and verse overlap issues? And what are those? Let's take a look at them. We're going to go to Genesis where the very first one happens. And it should be something that makes you go, what's that? All right, so we have two creation stories. Do we know that? Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. We've got the 7-day creation story, and then we've got the second creation story. But look at what happens here. He didn't overlap. He didn't end the first story in chapter 1 and then start the second one in chapter 2. He ended the first one in chapter 2. And look at what is there here. 3, on verse 3, 7th day. This is the point you should go, what the hell is that? All right, what we wouldn't have caught if we weren't paying attention is 7th, 7th, 7th is said 3 times. That's a clue right there. That's the clue. If he didn't put numbers in, that's what we're supposed to catch. The fact that 7th was repeated 3 times right there. But Langton made it easier. That's why it's overlapped that way. And we know it's incorrect. You look at this and we have "and God said," and God blessed, it's all the doublet, but it's "and God, and God." And down here, and right down here, "and God blessed." Down here, the second one, it switches to "Lord God, Lord God, Lord God, Lord God." So there's 2 different writing styles. That right there is an overlap that is meant to get your attention. Langton knows this pattern is in here. He knows that we don't have access to it, not having it memorized, and he's helping point the way for those who finds it. That means the high-level Catholic Church knows this is man-made, and they're using it as control. Okay, well, okay, that 3-7 is there. Now what? So what? Okay, I had to tie up that loose end. This is actually what this implies is that numbering pattern is conceptually in the stories anyway, but you would have to have them memorized. A simple example, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are, up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are." Okay, got it memorized. How many times was twinkle said? Oh, you start counting how many times words are repeated in there, and in that repeating, there's a code. But these stories are so huge, the repeats are massive, very huge, very big. We got simple brains. All right, back to Genesis, because this is where the magic begins. I'm going to grab that 3 and that 7 right there, and I'm going to put them on that list. And I'm going to say that those 2 numbers right there are going to align on a template. And what they're going to align with is this part of the second creation story. "And therefore a man leave his father and mother and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh." Here's the part right here. "And they were both naked, and the man and his wife, and were not ashamed." 3-7, that's what that is. The man naked and his wife naked and not ashamed. When we interpret this, we're going to find out that it is a human life template, if we treat it that way, and that this is going to represent the conscious and the subconscious, our being naked, uncovered, before we've experienced life. This is a childhood blissful state right here. That 3 and that 7. And 3 is going to represent what? 7 is the pure state. 3 up here is day 3. "And God said, Let the earth bring forth grass, and herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after its kind, and God saw that it was good." This is cryptic. Cause and effect. The seed, what is it that grows from the garden of your experience, your life? And it continues to produce more seed of its kind, and continues to replicate. So 3 and 7 is what? Do you recognize Eastern teachings in this? But not nested in verbiage that hints that way at all. Only after you interpret it. Honestly, here's the game of life begins right here. You are pure, and you're going to live through cause and effect. Now, start life. Something that's important to note is that every tradition teaches cause and effect somehow. Karma, the measure you mete unto others will be likewise meted unto you. Here it's being introduced as something that grows, that produces seeds, that produces more of itself again. That's the teaching of karma, or the law of reciprocity, at the beginning of any teaching. Okay, so that is what the 3 and 7 is going to represent. If we start moving through here, I'm going to start looking for other places where numbers are repeated. And when we get down here is where the next place it is. And what do we have here? 7, 70, and sevenfold. Start looking at this in different ways now. Not as if it's really there, but as if they're putting in a piece of code. Why would that even make any kind of sense? It's not. There's a 7 and a 7 right there, and a 70. Those two 7s are surrounding that 70. I'm going to now take the 3, the 7, and the 70 and put them on my list. I just use that to gather those numbers. I come down here into this weird numbering pattern, and I notice something. I look in here and I say, there's my 7 right here in this 807. There's a 912. There's my 12. There's a 840. There's my 40. I start looking at here and seeing that in these number patterns, the numbers that I see repetitively, I see them there as well, but they're in a bigger number. They're in a bigger number, aren't they? Okay, 900. Let's take a look at something. This is the King James Version. "900 is repeated exactly 7 times. What they're doing is shifting that 900 into a surrogate. Here's a 7 grabbing a 30. Here's a 7 grabbing a 12. Here's a 7 grabbing a 5. Here's a 7 grabbing a 10. Here's a 7 grabbing a 60 and a 2. Do you see what's happening there? What happens if we go back to an 800? This is where we're gathered. I call it an analog farm. 800, exactly 7 times. Well, ding, 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 ding. Look at, grab the 7, grab the 15, grab the 40, grab the 30, grab the 90 and 5. There we go. That's where we got those. That's where we got those numbers from that are repeating repetitively in the Bible from that analog farm right there. That's a group of numbers being gathered up in sequences to create a pattern. Then what happens? 7 is pure state. What happens in chapter 7? The flood. Noah's naked again. We go from our naked state to being covered back to naked again in chapter 7. We start seeing this numbering pattern emerge in a bigger story, both at a micro and a macro level. All right, there's a lot more to this, but in the interest of getting the video shortened up, I'm just going to cover them very quickly. Here at the beginning of the analog farm, we had that number I grabbed, 7-fold, truly Lamech, 70 7-fold. Then we have our analog farm. And when we get down here at the end, what do we have? And all the days of Lamech were 770 and 7 years, and he died. We've got Lamech, 770 and 7 here again. We have in between, it's opening and closing of an analog farm. And the other thing to consider, there's another analog farm in chapter 11. Let me get there. Here we have it. It's in these generational things, but we're going to see certain things that, from old, like this, 5 and 30. That's backwards. 4 and 30. At some point, you look at this and go, what if I don't treat these like they are compound numbers? In the King James Version, old versions, they're written in this way. This is really important to say. My NRSV has modified that to be just 912. You can see the separation. It's they either don't know the code is there and are dropping it, trying to clean up the verbiage, or they're intentionally hiding it. You have to keep those separated. They are not compound numbers. They're coded. But it's ultimately an easy matrix. All you do is understand nobody lives 900 years, but if 900 is repeated 7 times, then it's acting as a 7. If 800 is being repeated 7 times, it's acting as a 7. 403 years. And sometimes backwards. Okay, so anyway, I just realized at some point, you know what? Don't treat them like compound numbers. Treat them as something different, and then count how many times something is being repeated, and bingo, there you have it. And that's what the number is collection from. And that's something that anyone could do by looking at this and having and going through that same process. That's a very fixed process. And it's hidden in numbering. Now, I'm not going to pull it all up, but I'm going to show you an alignment here. See this Eden pure soul state? 12 is up here as one of the collected numbers. And chapter 12 is where Abram and Sarai are originally called. In the same way Adam and Eve are called to start from Eden, Abram and Sarai are called to start from Canaan, both with dietary restrictions. Actually, Canaan being devoid of anything to eat, they had to leave. So you're going to go off and experience life. 17 is one of the numbers that is collected here. That's collected during the flood. What is 17? Chapter 17 is where Abram and Sarai are converted to Abraham and Sarah. This is where the actual calling begins for the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. 21 would be a number that, since it's one advance beyond pure state, that means 21 would step into sin state. Watch what happens if we put Sodom into Genesis. Okay, Sodom. 21 times it's repeated. Sodom is a sin state. Yeah, Sodom represents that, like first sin. Okay, I'm going to show you something else. The way these are functioning, this is a little tricky. I'll talk about it, that the words that are being used are analogous for something different. So after the flood, naked, unashamed, or naked, drunk off your new wine, all that, your vineyard and all of that, the experience. Noah was naked. But if you read it, let's see exactly what it says right here. I'm going to show you how to pay attention to this. Okay, I've learned to just look for repeats of words. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers that are outside. But we have nakedness, nakedness. So nakedness is repeated 3 times right here. And throughout the entire book of Genesis, and that would be pure state. 3, isn't it? Or cause and effect. Nakedness is repeated exactly 5 times in the entire book of Genesis, which means that the term naked is a pure state. That means you are uncovered. That means psychologically or spiritually, however you want to say it, uncovered. Wine. 12 times. Wine's a good thing. Wine is how you feel. Wine is a good way to feel. It's a new way to feel. When Jesus talks about wine and wineskins, that's the same thing. You can't put old wine into new wineskins. You can't put old life into new life experience. You have to resolve the past before you move on. You got to make yourself pure before you put new life experience into it. That's what that is. Wine is not literally Merlot or a cab. It is an experience. It's the way you feel. All right, this is another piece that needs to be included. It starts getting very complicated. But if you look at something like this right here, we've got this analog farm down here right at the end of chapter 11. It's like stuck in there with the Babel story just before chapter 12 begins and the actual religion begins. But what we have down here is this little story that's pretty interesting. Terah is the dad. He begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Those were the sons. And Haran begat Lot. So they're creating a lineage. And Haran, son, died before his father Terah in the land of his nativity in Ur the Chaldees. So sadness right here. Terah had 3 sons and one of his sons died. Oh, sadness. Anyway, they go on for a while and there's a bit of the story goes on. But then the days of Terah were 205 years. And Terah, the dad, died in Haran, the son. How does a dad die inside of a son? The only way these work is that early versions of us die to older versions of us. It's teaching us that this is an inward path, but it's so hard to see, and it's old, really old. But here's what you have to keep in mind. That numbering pattern is built into the story. You would have to have it deeply memorized to know that. Langton knew we're not doing that anymore. It's all being written down now. It goes from memory to paper. What happens? Boy, the concepts need to be put in there. So he's numbering the pattern that's in there. He's not just putting out the chapters and verses. The chapters are each stage along the way. They're in the natural place. The verses are steps within that, micro steps within that. That's right there. He's pointing that out. And that's why the overlaps are not always good. Sometimes he'll have like a long sentence is verse 1. Sometimes he'll have like 2 names is verse 2, and then 2 more names, verse 3, and 2 more names, verse 4, and 2 more names, verse 5, and then suddenly, a full sentence, verse 6 again. It's broke up in ways you would go, why is he doing that? And you realize he's making sure that if it's a concept 7, stage that it's number 7 in the book. Okay, if you don't have it memorized, you have to know that that's 7, if that makes sense. It's an encoding thing, but it's a simple encoding thing simply done through numerical repeats within the story. It's not gematria or anything like that. It's not math. It's accessible to anybody that has this story. It's accessible to the shepherd boy out there spending his months alone tending his flock. All right, now it's so big that it's even like too big for me. It's so huge that it's like a monster. I need help with it. But if you start going through things like, let's just go through Sarai. Sarai's name is repeated exactly 17 times in here. Now, I gotta say, it honestly looks to me like all of the nouns and verbs are very specifically numbered to fit on this template. It's so big. Watch something. Here's a division. Let me show you just a little bit, a toehold of what I'm talking about right here. 4:19. And Lamech took unto him 2 wives. The name of the one was Adah, and the name of the other Zillah. Okay, now I'm going to suggest that this becomes an iteration of us, that we become Lamech, and that we have 2 potential inner directions we can go, good or bad. What is Lamech? Exactly 10 times. Lamech appears on the list as a good thing. What about Adah? Adah is exactly 8 times. Adah is a negative direction. Zillah, 3 times. Do you see what's happening at a deeper level? We never see this. It's right in our face. It's right there, but we don't know how to look at it. And the numbers are pointing the way, but we still don't know it well. I have to use the computer to get anywhere. All right, we can spend all day in Genesis, honestly, but what I need to do to tell you the truth is to establish that this template, this numerical pattern, almost a scaffolding, is there in a numbering pattern that you look at it now and go, okay, I'm not really sure what that is, but okay, I see what it is. What I'm going to do is show you that is maintained throughout all Jewish material, not only in the Old Testament, but in the New Testament as well. Someone is in the background writing these on a template. All right, I'll just pop up some recent ones I've had open. It does not matter where you go, you're going to find this is there, not only in all of the Holy Bible, but in also apocryphal material as well, and also in Gnostic material. You will find this numbering pattern there. I just popped up Psalms right here, and what we're going to see is something like this. Ungodly as an analog. We don't think that's very good, do we? But look, there it is, exactly 8 times. If you had any questions, there you have it. That's a sin state. They're maintaining a pattern. I'm going to jump down here to number 3 because we have a 3-7 grid that's going to be in the beginning of every story. Here on verse 3, we're going to have planted, which is repeated 7 times. So we've got our 3-7 acknowledgement, but you can see also that there are words being repeated a very specific amount of times. We've got a heathen here. 38, it goes into the 8. So you can say that 38 times. As long as it ends in 8, that's fine. There's something else in here. Look at when we get down to verse 8 here. Ask of me, I shall give thee the heathen for your inheritance and the uttermost parts of the earth for your possessions. This means you're going to live through your judged memories and the uttermost parts of the earth for your possession. You're going to live just in the physical world, connected to the physical world. That's like Adam's sin. You are going to live off of the land and not gain, full benefit from it, right there on verse 8. So we're seeing the micro, the macro, plus a numbering pattern in the analogous words themselves. All right, let's jump to another book. All right, I'm just going to grab 1 Samuel. All of these are from the King James Version. I will not do this with modern versions. This stuff's been dropped. I'm going to show you something. We get started here, and number 2 had 2 wives. One was Hannah, and the name of the other was Peninnah. Let's look at those. We should recognize this. Hannah 13 times. We see that. I've got it marked there. And then Peninnah. This was like the Lamech story, wasn't it? with some variations, but we should recognize this pattern. There we have it 3 times for Peninnah. So, 2 directions to go inward. The female is the inner part. Let's get down to verse 7. We're looking for our 7-3-3-7 acknowledgement at the beginning of every story, and I've got House of the Lord already identified here. So, House of the, that's all we need right there, House of the. But if we add Lord to it, it's said exactly 3 times throughout here. So we've got our 7-3 acknowledgement at the beginning of the stories. And even though we can look at that, ultimately what we have right here, the house of the Lord, this pure state, is analogously being represented in the same way that Eden would have been pure state in the beginning, in the very beginning story. In the beginning of this one, we've got the house of the Lord instead. It represents the pure inner self, and it's for a people that just call it the house of the Lord. If you don't interpret it and use it inward, you're going to worship it, and it'll be a part of your life regardless. You could seriously spend days just in one book, but I'm just hitting high points to show you the repetitive nature of this, and that it's being maintained throughout antiquity, this numbering pattern. Look what we have here, Jeremiah, King James Version again in the 2nd verse. It's in the 13th year of his reign. 13. What is that number? That's into the first sin area. You have to move on from there. And in the 11th year. What we have down here in verse 7 is, and you know what? If you look up here, verse 1 and verse 2 is one sentence. Why did he split them up? And 4 and 5, why did he split that up right there? The reason is this: thou shalt speak. Needed to be pushed down into verse 7. You see what he's doing? He's not making errors. He's putting them in places for us to find. He's putting it in the right place. We have to question what he's doing. You know what? If you go back and look at this too, those 3 came up as good. 7 and 3 is where that first one was. Look where the next one is. 27. 20 and 7 are both good. You add them together, you've got another option looking there. It kind of splits things up. But if you know that that's a 20 and a 7 right there, that is coming from the pool of good numbers, and you've got a 12 right here as well. So you can see that there's incredible density to this in a matrix crossover. You have to look at it and scratch your head. I do. He's not making a mistake. All right, it wouldn't be complete without Job. Whether you love it or hate it, what do we have here? He's got 7 sons and 3 daughters to begin with. Male and female components, 7 and 3. He's got 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels. Camels 3 times, oxen 3 times. You can look at it if you want to. 3 sisters to eat with him. We get down to 7. What do we have? Verse 7, and we have walking, I have previously identified. Indeed, we have it. What we have is a story being maintained on a template, very purposefully being written on a repeating template. However, we're supposed to find it in the numbering pattern. We don't know it well enough. Let's look elsewhere. All right, we have to step into the land of something that might seem a little bit bizarre. We have to think our way through it. In the book of Daniel, when we look for that 3-7 acknowledgement, this is what we find on verse 3. We're going to have eunuchs. Exactly 7 times. What's a eunuch in the beginning? That is a pure state. That is an individual that cannot reproduce. It is not, it's going to be a male that's been castrated typically, which is what that would be is an analog here is somebody like a monk or somebody like that who is going to go off in life and spiritually not produce offspring, but these are spiritual offspring, memories, judgments, not physical. You take it to the physical world and go, ooh, I don't like that. You go in the spiritual world and say, you know what? You want that. You want to be the eunuch. That means like being the monk or the saint or the pure one. the one that is not going out there and producing all kinds of offspring that are negative and derogatory. So this is a pure state to begin with, nested in this 3-7 right here. Very old. All right, you have to understand it's in the Old Testament. If you want to, you can just go download a copy and look for yourself. You don't need me to do this. I've jumped way far away into the New Testament, Matthew. What I'm going to do is show you the reestablishment of a number grid. What happens if I put 3 in here? 3 appears exactly 12 times. And what you're doing here is like this. For as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. That's the same comparison. And where is that? Verse 40. Ding, 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 ding. We're wrapping up some magic here. There's stuff we just don't see. We're not looking at it. Okay, if 3 and 12, 3 said 12 times, they're both on the list. It confirms itself. What happens if I put 7 in? 12. I don't have to do all the talking. You get it now. What about 12? This is how many times the word is said in the book of Matthew. 12 is said 12 times. All right, you see that happening. We're going to have an element at the beginning of the story that isn't okay. Look we've got David. 17. We recognize those numbers, don't we? Abraham. Pure. Who's not okay in here? Jacob begat Judas. Was Judas good or bad? 8 times. We get down here into that's all lineage. We get down here and the story begins. So we're going to have our 7-3 grid beginning down here as it begins. And we get down here into verse 7 and we're going to have diligently. Better if I spell it right. Diligently. There we have it. Diligently. 3-7 acknowledgement in Matthew. It's going to continue on. I'm going to show you something in Luke. All right, there's a number of fun things here to look at. First of all, there's 3 words on verse 3. Seemed, understanding, and right are all repeated 3 times. I'm not going to pull that up now. I don't know if there's things going on that I don't understand. I just see the repeats. I have a good idea what's going on, but I do not have it 100% dialed in. I do know that every story is going to start with that 7-3 acknowledgement, that creation 7-3. You see it here, verse 7, barren. 3 times in the book of Luke. So it's going to start the same way. These are following very specific patterns. Now, beyond that, there's a shifting of the analogs. What does that term barren mean? If you don't interpret it, you think, well, that's a woman that can't have children or doesn't have children. And if you try to say, no, that's not what it is about. That's how it sounds if you don't interpret it. But if you interpret it in the psyche, barren is your inner self. It's your pure state. It's that beginning state, Garden of Eden, Canaan, devoid of food, barren, inner female state here. There's a bigger concept in the background that's tough to see. You have to understand there's a mental hierarchy and how that stuff fits in, and that it's analogous verbiage that means something different. If I'm naked in the physical world, that's not okay. It's standing in public. If I'm naked spiritually, that means I have nothing to hide. You got nothing on me. That is okay. That is highly desirable. You have to interpret these or you don't get into the ability to interact with it. I'm going to go down here and we're going to start something different. We're going to look at a few different things. All right, it was 8 days were accomplished for the circumcising of the child. The name was called Jesus. Do we know why it's 8 days? And look, it's on verse 21. 8 days, 8 and 21. We've got an alignment right there. All right, circumcision, 8, day 8. What is that? If we look through here, there's physical things that happen if you don't interpret it. If you do interpret it, the physical part goes away and there's a spiritual part, but you have to understand its analogous verbiage. It's held in kind of a tricky way. Circumcision means cutting off the I've been circumcised. It's cutting off the foreskin of the penis at a young age. I don't think I was 8. We're not Jewish. It was just, weird reasons. Abrahamics anyway. They get wild ideas. Okay, so circumcision in the spiritual world means I have now judged something and I'm hurting from it, and it's time to heal it. It's time to resolve it. A circumcision would be the same thing as removing the mote from your eye, forgiving the odd against your brother, becoming poor in spirit. Circumcision, cutting off the judgment. All of those are going to be analogous terms that sound radically different but mean the same thing. That's why it's on day 8 that happens. You've now had a judgment. It's not that you've sinned. Do you get what's happening? It's spiritual. The circumcision is a spiritual thing, not a physical thing. And where I'm coming up with those negative numbers from really comes from the idea that from 7 into first sin, that's a step. So that's going to be 8. So when you see the 8 show up, that means, okay, you've moved beyond your pure state into a judged state of life. By default then, how does the code work? We're going to take a bunch of numbers and make them equal to this. So 20, pure state. What's first sin? 21. 30, pure state. What's next step? 31. Like that. So every time you have an advancement to 1 beyond a pure state, that's going to be equal to first sin or 8. And it's code. It's numerical code buried in the repeating of the numbers, the nouns and verbs. You'd have to have access to it through memorization or a computer. To be honest, spiritual is still an analog. It's mental. If you interact with it, then it's going to be something mental, not spiritual. It will feel spiritual because it impacts our emotional state of being. But truly, emotional states of being are driven by mental states of being. As we get down here, we're going to see things like it was 12 years old. He was 12 years old. 12 is that pure state. After 3 days, they found him in the temple. 12, 3. 15 years of the reign. Here we go, 7. He was baptized, is said 7 times. Wrath is 3 times to come. I'm just looking for some high points here. Jesus himself was about 30 years of age. Being 40 days tempted by the devil in those days, did not eat. Do you see all those numbers are just coming right off that right out of Genesis, out of that analog farm? All right, Mark. We got to take a look at these 3 stories about Jesus, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, don't we? Right off the bat, 3, the voice. Seven times. And you look here again, look at the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. As it is written in the prophets, behold, I send my messenger before your face, which shall prepare the way before you. The voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way. That's really one sentence right there, broken into 3 in order to put this on verse 3 right here. Those are the things he's doing that make you sometimes scratch your head and say, why doesn't he just make every sentence the next verse? It's because it would not align. You wouldn't see the concepts. He's putting them in the right verse for us so that we can see it. If we look, this is what we're missing by not having it memorized. All right, then we get down here and we see the same thing. See 6 and 7. He didn't have to break that up. It could have been one verse, but we need there cometh one. That three-peat right there to be in verse 7. It has to be there. So he's identifying everything. If you look, it's like, oh yeah, he's separating chapters and verses so we can now study. But if you look closer, he's doing more than that. Much more. He's pointing to something that is a numerical pattern built into the story that we don't even see. All right. There cometh one. There cometh one. 3, 7, 3. Any questions? Any doubts? All right, to me, John shifts into a more modern, maybe more aggressive Roman verbiage here. Let's take a look and see what they're doing. Verse 3, without. Sure enough. Verse 7, the same came. 7, 3. All right, Revelation. Look how thick this is. Jesus Christ. 7. So that's pure state, right? Isn't it? I'm going to jump down to a few different things here. You know what? Let's go down here. Satan. 8 times. That's evil, isn't it? Devil. 8 times. That's evil, isn't it? They're building on a code. They're building on a numerical platform. 3. 3-7 grid we're looking for. Blessed. There it is. 3-7. Prophecy. We'll double up on it. 7. Sure enough. What about down here in 7? Even so. 3 times. Okay. So, we can continue to do that. There's no reason to. Look how long the video's gotten already, and it's just huge. It just keeps going and going and going. There is something so big here. If you looked at it, you'd be like, okay, this is man-made. This is a structure that exists way back from the early part of Genesis and those analog farms. Or is that where it started? Let's look at something from the Babylonian creation epic, the Enuma Elish. All right, we're looking at the Enuma Elish here. I've got the entire thing here. We're starting at tablet 1 here. It doesn't have chapters and verses in the same way the Bible does. It was not put that way. But let's take a look at a couple of things. 3. 3 is repeated 5 times. What about 7? 7 is repeated 3 times. 7 wins. 4th to 7. 4th to 7 echelons. Okay. Now, the destructive force is Lady Huber. Lady Huber is the one that is the power that's called in to cause all of this turmoil. Lady Huber. Lady Huber is the destructive force. 8 right there. I want to be careful with this one because it came from clay tablets and there was never a 100% collection. They were fragmentary but fairly complete. But if you look carefully here through certain sections of it, you're going to see that numbering pattern appeared to be in use by the Babylonians, at least in a small scale. And then when the Jews got a hold of it and they started creating the religion really big, they added in those analog farms and created a larger numbering pattern. And that's what that lineage is for, the 900, 800, 700, 600 years and all that. They're collecting numbers in a strange numbering pattern that it would require looking at in a completely different way. The idea that it's true the idea that it's true is ridiculous. The idea that it's not true is accurate. However, there's something there. In fact, if you learn to recognize what this template is as a human life template, those lineages are happening at a point on the template where we've started out in life and we're just living blind. Time goes by and we're just becoming new iterations, going through relationships and things of that nature. So the stories have those in there. These right here with the numbering pattern are fit right in where the template says time goes by, but they're doing more than that. They're creating a code for storytelling that's going to go on for centuries. All right, if you're still with me, let me just blow this up even bigger. This is going to just, if this is blowing your socks off, wait till you see this. I'm going to grab an apocryphal work, something called Susanna. This became apocryphal. This was not accepted as to be part of the religion. But take a look at something here. 3-7. 3, verse 3, daughter, 7. Daughter exactly 7 times. Okay, in this apocryphal work, they're maintaining the same pattern. There's a school of teaching that is deeper than what the Bible is. Verse 7, we've got husband. You see that in about half of these stories, that 7-3 also correlates to male-female. It's very directly sending us back to the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve, naked, unashamed, in the garden. That's the starting point. That's what they're replicating here. All right, now, if we go over here, we're going to see what's happening is that Susanna's in her garden, and these two elders are watching her, and these are like some lustful old guys in the church that are like perverts. And they perverted their own mind. Yeah, obviously, the story tells us they're lusting for her in her garden. These are church elders. Let's take a look at something here. The elder is the evil element. All right, I don't want to leave any stones unturned. What we have right here is the Gospel of Thomas, Gnostic Society material. Most people are pretty familiar with this. I've done a lot of work on interpretation of this material. We're going to get down here to verse 7 and look what it says. Jesus said, "Blessed is the lion which becomes man when consumed by man, and cursed is the man whom the lion consumes, then the lion becomes man." Right off the bat, you can see that lion, and lion is said 3 times in there. Is it possible? Let's try the entire document. Lion is not typically used in Jesus material. Lion 3 times. So right here we have our 7-3 acknowledgement. You know what I'm going to do? Watch this. This is verse 7 from Jonah. You know the story, Jonah and the whale? This is in the Bible. "And they said, every one to his fellow, come and let us cast lots, that we may know for whose cause this evil is upon us. So they cast lots, and the lot fell upon Jonah." Every is said 3 times, but Lot is said 3 times. Let's go take a look at the book of Jonah itself. There we go, Lot. There was cloth in there too. Okay, so what we have is Lot's only appears 3 times in this entire book, and it's just right here to complete that 7-3. Same thing that we have over in the Gospel of Thomas. All right, this tells me if I have some sort of a school teaching people how to create these stories, that one of the techniques for verse 7, or the 7th concept right there, is to simply repeat a word somehow 3 times right there that appears nowhere else in the entire book. Bingo, you've created a very simple 7-3 starting point for your document, which fits the criteria of the teaching on the template. Gnostics, I've studied this stuff. I have no problem at this point bursting anybody's bubble. Do you know that verse 102 said, Jesus says, "Woe to the Pharisees, for they are like a dog sleeping in the cattle manger, for it does not eat nor let the cattle eat," is an Aesop's fable from about 500 years earlier called The Dog in the Manger. It's not woe to the Pharisee, but in this case it's what an evil beast. He won't let us eat, nor will he himself eat. That, of course, is completely applicable in both cases, because what it's stating is that the people who are teaching this material don't understand what they're teaching. They don't understand the inward path. They're still waiting for Jesus to come back. They don't understand it's them. So what you're going to find is that there's nothing unique from antiquity other than the way that they're trying to make it sound. This is kind of a sloppy collection because you can see it from other places. Okay, I can just keep doing this and doing this. I got it cracked open. I don't think anybody's seen this before. It really, to me, demonstrates that there is something bigger in the background that is well known, and that the public is being controlled and manipulated by this. But that also a lot of people, it's more than that. There's people out there that need this control and manipulation. I don't know what the world would be like if Christianity was proven to be fake, or all of Abrahamic material. Exposing something like this, you're like, okay, there it is right there, but it's so complicated, people aren't seeing it. You have to spend time with it. But once you do find it, you can't unsee it. But it's incredibly old, and we're living in modern biases. People either like it or they don't like it. And it's so hard to learn it. It's taken me years to figure where I am right here. Yet when you look at it long enough and reason through it, you realize that the numbering pattern that was included in there is meant to say, hey guys, take a look here. That's from the church. They didn't just put in chapters and verses. They put chapters and verses where all of the step sequences are that fit on the pattern of you start out 7-3. You're going to live through cause and effect, and you start out pure. However, things are going to go bad, life's going to go bad, and hopefully you get a chance to turn inward and heal yourself. But each of these are steps and stages along the way, but they're even going so far as identifying them in analog forms. They want you to find this if you have the capacity to. The clues are in there. The clues are in the Bible. You just can't listen to anybody tell you what the Bible means. You have to just tell them, shut up, I see patterns in here that I'm going after. As a kid, that's what I was seeing. I was seeing those patterns, but I was just barely seeing a little bit of it. The more I dig into it, there was no way for me to ever realize that nouns and verbs were being repeated exactly the same amount of times as well. That was very hidden. All I was seeing is those 22 numbers being repeated over and over again. But even then, again, I only saw, same sort of thing. Jesus is in the tomb the same time, the same duration as Jonah's in the whale, as a matter of fact. All of those are repeating motifs that you can at some point detect. Okay, that's it for this video. Questions, comments, ideas, thoughts, I'd appreciate it. Honestly, I could use help with other people going, yeah, okay, I see what you got going on there. Let me try to help you figure this out. I'm deep into it, but I'm still going, whew. God, this stuff is 5,000, 6,000 years old. What are they doing? I'm getting there, but I'm not there. All right. See you in the next video.